Good to have you here. This is Omni View, episode 116 for July 18th, 2026. Multiple perspectives, one briefing. Let's look at the day's news from every angle. Venezuela's twin earthquakes have killed more than 5,000 people and now require coordinated international reconstruction aid to begin. Officials reported that the death toll from the twin earthquakes that struck the coastal state of La Guaira on June 24 has now surpassed 5,000. The government announced it will draw $346 million from the International Monetary Fund to support reconstruction efforts. The quakes occurred within a minute of each other and caused widespread destruction in the region north of Caracas. Venezuelan officials emphasized the urgent need for external financing to restore basic services and housing after the scale of the disaster became clear. International financial institutions highlight established procedures that tie emergency disbursements to verified damage assessments and repayment commitments. Critics of IMF involvement argue that such loans can add long-term debt burdens even when immediate relief is necessary, while supporters point to the fund's role in preventing deeper economic collapse in affected nations. How do governments balance immediate reconstruction needs against future repayment obligations? Shifting now to developments in the Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian forces carried out a strike on a warehouse complex belonging to Wild Berries, an online marketplace often described as Russia's Amazon, in the Tambov region. Reports indicate 7 people were killed and more than 24 wounded in the attack. The incident marks a direct hit on civilian commercial infrastructure inside Russia. Ukrainian military statements frame the strike as a legitimate response targeting logistics that support the broader war effort. Russian authorities describe the site as a civilian facility and highlight the human cost to workers and local residents. What distinguishes military from civilian logistics targets in prolonged conflicts? Hungary's new leadership has begun reviewing environmental compliance and tax arrangements for the country's roughly $20 billion electric vehicle sector. The industry had previously operated under significant protections. The shift includes scrutiny of manufacturing practices and potential tax adjustments. Government officials argue that stronger oversight will align the sector with environmental standards and generate additional public revenue. Industry representatives and investors stress that sudden policy changes risk undermining long-term commitments and could slow the transition to electric vehicles. How do governments weigh environmental enforcement against economic development goals? Wessex Water increased its chief executive's base salary by 14% to £670,000, despite a ban on performance bonuses linked to sewage spills. The rise exceeded the 3.5% awarded to other employees and brought total compensation to £791,000. Union representatives criticized the decision as excessive given ongoing service issues. Company accounts present the adjustment as part of standard executive compensation reviews. Labor groups contend that such increases during periods of regulatory penalties erode public trust in utility management. How are executive pay decisions insulated from regulatory sanctions in regulated industries? A former London Underground cleaner who was dismissed after raising concerns about asbestos and other dust in tunnels and vents has called for greater public awareness of potential health hazards. The worker had cleaned decades of accumulated material from confined spaces beneath platforms. A tribunal later found the dismissal unfair. The former employee and his representatives argue that maintenance practices have not kept pace with known risks from legacy materials. Transport officials maintain that safety protocols are in place and that past cleaning methods met prevailing standards at the time. What processes allow underground workers to escalate health concerns without retaliation? Germany's interior minister stated that the country faces a heightened risk of attack that could occur at any time. The announcement comes alongside reports of a train security guard critically injured after falling from a moving train. Authorities have not linked the two developments. Security officials stress the need for continued vigilance and resource allocation to prevent potential incidents. Civil liberties organizations caution against measures that could broadly affect daily life without clear evidence of imminent plots. How do governments communicate evolving threat levels without causing undue alarm? Iraq and Syria signed an agreement to repair and reopen an oil pipeline that offers an alternative export route. The project aims to diversify transport options away from existing straits. Details on timelines and financing remain under discussion. Energy officials in both countries describe the pipeline as a step toward greater regional energy security and revenue stability. Analysts note that restored infrastructure could ease pressure on other export corridors while raising questions about maintenance responsibilities and security arrangements. How do pipeline restoration projects affect broader energy transit strategies? The price comparison site Money Supermarket introduced a new low-cost investing service offering access to Vanguard funds aimed at beginners. The platform seeks to compete with established investment providers. Early details focus on simplified entry points and fee structures. Company executives present the launch as an effort to broaden access to investing for first-time users. Existing investment platforms note that competition may drive down costs, but also requires clear disclosure of risks and returns. Consumer groups stress the importance of comparing total fees and fund performance across options. How do new entrants in financial services differentiate themselves from established providers? Fiat introduced the Topolino, a compact electric vehicle priced at £9,000 with a top speed of 28 miles per hour and a range of 46 miles. The model targets short urban trips and is smaller than conventional city cars. Sales begin in the UK market. Fiat positions the vehicle as an affordable option for buyers seeking minimal running costs in dense areas. Urban planners and environmental groups note that very low-speed vehicles can complement public transport but require dedicated infrastructure considerations. Industry observers highlight how regulatory categories for micromobility influence design choices and market positioning. How do manufacturers adapt vehicle specifications to meet different national regulations? Skyroot Aerospace successfully flew the Vikram 1 rocket, marking India's first privately developed commercial launch to orbit. The company, a space tech unicorn, completed the mission on Saturday. The flight represents a milestone for the country's private space sector. Company leaders describe the launch as validation of domestic engineering capabilities and a step toward regular commercial services. Government space agencies note the growing role of private firms in expanding launch capacity. International observers track how new entrants affect global launch market competition and technology transfer. How do private companies secure the technical and regulatory approvals needed for orbital launches? The Ted Lasso actress Hannah Waddingham spoke about managing guilt over time spent away from her 12-year-old daughter while filming. Waddingham also addressed public perceptions of her on-screen persona. The comments appeared in a recent interview. Waddingham frames the experience as a common challenge for working parents in demanding professions. Media coverage often highlights the tension between career visibility and family responsibilities. Audience reactions vary, with some relating to the described pressures and others focusing on the public nature of such disclosures. How do performers navigate public discussion of private family matters? A woman was ordered to pay £10,000 after stealing another person's identity online and conducting a 4-year campaign involving fake profiles and AI-generated content. The victim, Sasha Davies, was targeted by Elha Mai Weston using social media images. The case concluded with a court ruling. The victim describes the prolonged distress caused by the impersonation and the difficulty of proving ongoing harm. Legal representatives note that identity theft cases increasingly involve digital tools that complicate detection. Courts continue to develop remedies that address both financial and emotional impacts in such disputes. How do courts assess damages in prolonged online identity misuse cases? Now, to really understand this story, there's something most coverage leaves out. The IMF maintains a framework requiring rapid damage assessments, government requests, and agreement on repayment terms before dispersing emergency resources. These steps draw on established lending facilities designed for balance of payments crises rather than ad hoc grants. Knowing this, when you hear reports of immediate relief, you can evaluate whether the timeline reflects standard procedures or additional negotiations over conditions. Historical examples show that countries often combine IMF support with bilateral aid and domestic budget reallocations. Next time you see a headline about reconstruction funds, ask what assessments were completed, what repayment schedule was accepted, and which other financing sources are also involved. Tomorrow, watch for further updates on how the new pipeline agreement between Iraq and Syria affects regional energy flows. That wraps up today's Omni View. Remember, the best informed people read more than one perspective. If this show helps you do that, share it with someone who values fair coverage. See you tomorrow, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nara Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the Nara Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Tesla Shorts Time, your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on naranetwork.com, scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.